everybody. This is Kurt Sasek, president of Winetasters Choice. I have Mr. Joe Wright. He is the winemaker at Left Coast Cellars in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. And yes, it's pronounced Willamette, not Willamette. So anyways, Joe, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, please tell us, a little bit of your background and then Left Coast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sure. Just in a nutshell, I moved out to Colorado from Los Angeles when I was 21 years old, looking in search of snow. Snow melted, made a lot of friends, didn't want to leave, needed a different job than working on the lifts. So I got a retail job in a wine shop. So 2 years there, I guess 2.5 years there, ended up doing a lot of the wine buying ultimately. And as a lot of you out there know, when you're in a retail setting, you're never so up to snuff on, vintages and regions and producers, and it just comes to you every day of the week. You get to taste all these fantastic wines, and it really opened up my eyes just to the world of wine. My employers at the time were huge advocates of employee education and were constantly sending us out to distributor tastings and wine, like the Aspen Food and Wine Fest and the Steamboat Wine Festival and stuff, all these mountain wine events. And one of the last ones that my still good friend and old ex-employer Bob Jenkins sent me to was at the Little Nell in Aspen for at the time was a national Oregon wine promoting tour put on by the Oregon Wine Advisory Board. They came out. It was basically a little on a road version of Oregon Pinot Camp, where all of the presidents and producers and wine growers came out to Aspen. They had also hit like New York and Chicago and Aspen, and I can't remember where they went on from there. But I got to sit and listen and taste and eat and converse and be educated by the Oregon wine pioneers at the time. This was back in '96. Very impressionable at the time. I was 23 years old, and the guys that started telling me I should come out to Oregon and I'd fit right in. And so I did. I moved out about 2 months later, February of '96, got a job at a winery, and here I am 24 years later.
So you didn't go to school for winemaking? You just kind of learned on the job?
No, yeah. I was on my way to getting a degree in hydrology. I wanted to work for the Edison Company in the high Sierras, getting water from the mountains to Los Angeles. And
is that common? Like I was a chef for 27 years, and it used to drive me crazy. You see ads looking for chefs. Oh, must have a culinary degree. And I used to laugh because that's ridiculous, because if you work in the right places and you get the right experience, that's all you need. So is it the same in the wine industry, or are you an anomaly?
No. I mean, there's certainly, I think, an equal amount of both, educated through the universities, and then people that just learn their work through the trade. I think that, I've done a lot of hiring over the years, of course, and being here in the Willamette Valley and close to Oregon State University, that has a great bid and board program. The students coming out of the systems are great. People that just learn through the trade as well. They don't teach you everything as you can imagine in school. I mean, if they don't teach you that on a Saturday night when you have 20 tons of Chardonnay on the crush pad and your bladder busts and your press, how to fix it and keep going, and so that you don't lose, your crop and ultimately your wine. You learn that by being in the wineries on the ground floor and spending, multiple years doing it and going through different scenarios and learning from them. Well, I suppose the thing that comes to mind this morning is it's really not a complex art at all. The art is in the wine growing, and once you can get great grapes onto your crush pad, the process, the main character in getting the grapes into a fine wine are called yeast. And if you can understand yeast and what keeps yeast happy, you're going to make great wine. So great grapes, happy yeast equal great wine. It's really simple.
You said that the first and foremost, you said it's not complicated to make great wine, but there's certain things that are critical. So when it comes to and the first one you said is growing the grapes, right?
Yes.
So what would you say, Kurt? Whatever you do this to make sure you get happy grapes.
Wherever you happen to plant those, just understand your site. You can't bend the will of the grape into some ideal wine that you might think you want to make. So understand your site and just go with it. So if you're working at lower elevation sites, if you're working in deeper soils, more production oriented, well, that's the kind of wine you're going to make, and embrace it. If you don't embrace it and you're trying to shove a square peg through a round hole, it's not going to be wine. Whether you're making price point wines or super fine wines, just go with what your site's going to give you, and embrace what that is, and believe in it and follow through. And it'll be just that, whether it's a $10 bottle or a $50 or $60 bottle. I think it'll shine.
Yeah. So what you were saying about embrace, you can't put a square peg in a round hole. I guess it would be fair to say that in Argentina, they learned that lesson, which is why they went crazy with Malbec.
Yeah. Now I'm not totally. I don't know that history, but I do know that Malbec's wonderful there. What was it that they transitioned from?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I just remember in the mid '90s or early '90s, we just started. Malbec started becoming huge.
So I guess too, kind of that philosophy here at Left Coast, we're a 490 acre estate. I've got 142 currently producing acres on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 completely different vineyard sites. And I kind of talked about, wines ranging in price. We have wines that range anywhere from $25 to $65 a bottle, something like that. And, and they come from these, very specific areas, and, like say that, we have all those different types of ground, and they translate into those different price point bottles.
So you have how many different wines in Left Coast right now on average in a given year? You have is it 12? Is it I got your site pulled up here.
Well, we make a lot of wines. It's something in the high 20s. We produce a lot of wines that don't ever leave the property, that are sold primarily through our tasting room and to our wine club members. So now in the national market, it's 4 to 5 different Pinot Noirs, a white Pinot Noir and a Rosé, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, and Viognier. So yeah, like you said, a dozen nationally, but twice that and a little more as a whole. And again, if you get onto our website, or if you join our wine club, you'll start seeing a lot of special, very small production wines that come off the Left Coast.
The first time I had a white Pinot Noir was yours, and we had
Right.
it, and I'm like, white Pinot Noir, what the hell is that? Because I had never heard of it, but just the name White Pinot Noir, I thought, I don't care what it tastes like, I'm probably going to like it just because it sounds so unusual. But anyways, it was when I tried it, I was like, holy cow! It reminded me of a cross between a Sauvignon Blanc that's not overly fruity, and maybe a Pinot Gris with a dash of Pinot Noir. That's how I describe it, and I know it's subjective, but
no, totally, yeah, I get it.
But my question is, now I understand winemaking to the extent that if you leave the skins on longer, you're going to get more color. Is there anything about white Pinot Noir other than taking the skins off early that keeps it white? I mean, because that's such a foreign thought to pretty much everybody. White Pinot Noir.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty much it, Kurt. But there are probably another dozen just really small things that we do that add up to ultimately a white wine as well. I tend to pick this fruit a little lower in sugar, so we can get a lower pH and a higher acidity. I like it to be just kind of crisp and fresh and vibrant and lively, stylistically speaking. And I guess as a result of all of that, there's less anthocyanin concentration or color pigment in the skin. So, but when we do pick early in the morning, very cold fruit. The primary goal once it hits the crush vat is to separate the juice from the skins. The fruit is picked, hand-picked, whole clustered, gently transported from the field to the winery, again, not to macerate and get any color extraction. When we press, I tend to stop the press earlier in its cycle than I would normally, because towards the end of the press, you start seeing a lot more color extraction coming from the juice pan, and we don't want that. In the end, as far as juice processing goes, that wine comes off fairly orange, salmony in color. Primary fermentation metabolizes a lot of color. So even though you go to start ferment maybe orange, it finishes up very lightly pink. Elevage, just thyme, color starts to deteriorate as well. Filtration, again, a little more goes away. And then ultimately, like almost most producers, when we add our sulfur to the wine as a antimicrobial, antioxidant to preserve our wines for you. And that has an oxidative effect on color as well. You might start off orange, but you end up just a very light pale yellow.
Now I understand that the Pinot Noirs from Oregon, in terms of style, are more similar to the Pinot Noirs in Burgundy as opposed to California. And I understand part of that is because of the climate. If you agree with that, is there anything else that contributes to that? Like maybe the soil composition in Oregon is similar to the soil composition in Burgundy or?
Yeah, now I'd agree with your first statement that they're more similar to one side than the other. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so they're more similar to Burgundy than they are to California, but still I think we're very distinctly Oregon. And I think anybody can taste three of these wines side by side and say they came from different places. That's my feeling that, as and all of your listeners out there know, what truly makes our wines at Left Coast distinct from our neighbors just down the road, our California neighbors, our Burgundy neighbors, our New Zealand neighbors, who all make fabulous Pinot Noir. But what makes us distinctly different that can't be replicated anywhere else is our soil and our microclimate. And those directly influence how you perceive our wines. And it can't be replicated. I said that before, but I'll say it again, that you can't mimic it. We have sub-AVAs just north of us, about 30 miles or so, that have very similar growing elevations and incredibly similar soils, but the microclimate's totally different and the wines are completely different. Here at Left Coast, our soils, we grow our grapes on marine sedimentary bedrocks with very shallow topsoils. Our bedrock is made up of sand and silt and diatomites and seashells. A long time ago, the Pacific Ocean used to lap up against Idaho, and Oregon was underwater. And so this is an accumulation of all the sand and silt that came from the atmosphere, found its way to the ocean floor, and got pushed down by the weight of the ocean. And over time, seashells and marine life got interladen in that. I think, and I don't know how that makes our wine taste the way it tastes, but you can't replicate that anywhere else. We also I touched on very shallow topsoils. I think 13 to 15,000 years ago, there was another great lake in the Northeast. It was above Missoula, Montana, and this lake had a glacial dam that kept breaking. It broke, I think, 18 to 25 times, and as a result created the Columbia Gorge and backfilled into the Willamette Valley. What happened in our little tiny section of these foothills in the Van Duzer corridor, that's our sub-AVA, is these floods washed down, and through these hills, they created a lot of turbulence and washed a lot of our topsoils away. So our bedrock is made of the old ocean floor. Our topsoils were stripped away by these floods 15,000 years ago. That affects how our vines grow. That affects the morphology, the physiology of the grape cluster, the berries, the berry size, the skin thickness, and that affects how you perceive our wine. As far as the microclimate goes at Left Coast Cellars, we're in the Willamette Valley, which is basically only a 70-mile stretch roughly from Eugene to Portland. We are nestled in between the Cascade Mountains and the coastal mountains to the west of us, and there's a gap in these coastal mountains to the west of us that gives our sub-AVA a lot of marine influence. Our diurnal temperature shifts are quite large, anywhere from 20 to 50 degrees in a given day. It can reach 105 degrees during the day, and it can get down to 55 at night, just like a click of your fingers. So there's the diurnal temperature shifts that slow ripening and elongate the season. But the other thing that comes with that gap in the western coastal range for us is wind. We are incredibly windy out here constantly. You can set your watch by it. About 10:30, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, the wind kicks up, and it doesn't stop until the sun's about to go down. So we basically, I would say, all of that combined, we have fairly deep. We have some older vines here that don't look very old, or very. It's a very devigorating kind of soil and climate. The winds tend to set the fruit up with much thicker skins. We get a lot more tannin out of our wines as a result of that. The juice to skin ratio is less, meaning we have more skin, more anthocyanin or darker colors, more tannin, more chewiness, and yeah, we have nothing to do with that. It's just what our site gives us. And so when we bring it into the winery, it's a very much less is more approach. We let fermentation take over, and we keep our yeast happy, and we pay close attention to what our wines are calling for. And that's what you get.
So when you say microclimate, I think I understand this, but so Oregon has a climate, but then in your region, the climate can have some variance. Left Coast Cellars has been around for 17 years. You guys already have a superb reputation. That seems like a pretty fast ascent? Am I right? Because to establish a vineyard takes a long time.
Yes, it does. You're right. From planting to your first crop is roughly 3 years. For that crop, that vineyard to actually mature and to become consistent, and to create a wine that has a few more layers of complexity. I start seeing that after about 10, 11 years. That's when they can start becoming a little more predictable, and we can start understanding, what they truly just inherently are. And again, not trying to bend the will of the vineyard into some idea of a wine that you want, but to just embrace what it is and to just allow it to follow through. It takes a 10 to, where our vineyards are just touching on 20 years now. The original blocks are.
Some wines are complex, and then some wines are just not. Is there a way you can describe, without getting too technical, why some wines are more complex and why some aren't? Is it maybe that the winemaker adds more influence, or it's just the whole process altogether, and it's not that, or maybe it's not that simple to explain?
I think it is. And it's two words. It's vineyard site. There are great vineyard sites and there aren't. And you can plant a vineyard anywhere. And you never know, right? If your vineyard site's going to be great, you can certainly compare to where some great wines are grown and look at your land and see if there's some similarities or not. And there's a lot of merit to that, of course, in this day and age, of course, that all that information is there for you. But it's vineyard site.
Okay.
It's
can't fit a square peg in a round hole. Going back to that thing.
You can't make a great wine from a poor vineyard site. I just
Okay.
haven't seen it yet.
So is this analogy, since I was a chef, you can make good food out of mediocre raw products, but you can't make great food out of mediocre raw products.
Yes.
So you have what, 20 something different wines you make on the site. How do you manage that? So let's say you've got 5 Pinot Noirs, you've got a Pinot Gris, a white Pinot Noir, a Sauvignon Blanc. I'm just spitballing. When it comes to actually picking the grapes and making the wine, how does that work? Do you have like, okay, all the Pinot Noirs go over here, the Latitude 45 goes to this vat, the Cali's Cuvée goes to this vat?
Sure. It's a lot. Well, and it isn't. I mean, we've been doing it for enough years, but I guess I'll pick on one thing. So our Pinot Noir program, depending on the vintage, we will make, one, two, three, four, five, six different Pinot Noirs, depending on the vintage. We have 3 of those wines are vineyard designated wines. Again, back to site. We've recognized over the years of trialing through the vineyards and going back and forth where specifically the Latitude 45 comes from. Latitude 45 block is 3 blocks, and right in the heart of block number 2 pick for the Latitude 45. I have special 1.5 ton open top oak fermenters that do make really a next level wine. That's where that wine goes to. But like our other vineyard designates, our Wright bank is actually just up the hill, another 75 to 150 feet from the Latitude box, but it's a different clone. It's Pomard. And again, we just pick from that heart of that block where we're looking for just that perfect vine balance and fruit balance, and so we're picking specifically from the vineyard for these wines. Another one we have is called Truffle Hill, completely different vineyard site. Sits up on top of a ridge behind the winery and tasting room. It's surrounded by oaks. It doesn't see a whole lot of that marine influence as far as the winds go. And as a result, the skins are a little thinner. It makes it for a much more perfumey and much more elegant wine compared to some of the other more tannic wines. We've recognized where we're picking 3 of these wines every year. They come from the same place. So that's pretty straightforward. The balance of the estate's Pinot Noir, aside from the white Pinot Noir program, goes into our estate blend that we refer to as our Cali's Cuvée. Cali's the daughter here, yeah. And so all of those wines get fermented in specific fermenters as well. And I mentioned that I've spoken of 4 of the 6 wines, and then we have another wine called the Christina's block. And Christina's the wife of Taylor, who's the son of family ownership. She's now ownership as well. Anyway, Christina's block is basically a placeholder for really cool different things that might happen on the estate on any given year. So that stylistically, that wine's a lot of fun to follow because it's completely different every year. Some years we pick a small Pomard block in our Truffle Hill block that's primarily a Wadensville clone, but we want to just pick this out so it doesn't get lost into the big blend of things at Left Coast. So we'll put it in the Christina as well. Last year we did a whole cluster fermentation that just turned out fabulous. We're gonna, but it's small production, and we don't want to lose it again into the bigger blend of things here at Left Coast. So we'll put it under the Christina's label. And then, like all of the women, I think you're seeing the trend here. All the women get a label. So then there's the Suzanne's estate, who's our matriarch. Suzanne's the owner of Left Coast, her and Bob. Suzanne's estate, I don't produce every year. I only produce it on exceptional vintages. It seems like I hit about every even year in the last decade here at Left Coast with the Suzanne's estate, and and we just want to make sure it's nothing less than an absolute superb wine. In good years, we'll cherry pick barrels from the cellar. We'll make 75 or 150 cases of it for that bottling, and that's just and then as far as all of our other varietals, the only other one would be Chardonnay that we make different levels of. Otherwise, Pinot Blanc comes from our 3.5 acres of Pinot Blanc. That's just what it is. The Viognier is 1 acre. It's one acre, one bottling. It's just what you get every year. 1 acre produces 2 tons. When we press this, we typically average about 160 gallons per ton, or 320 gallons. I'm going to subtract out about 5%. So we had about 304 gallons. That's just for lees loss. We barrel ferment and age, so there's just evaporation and stuff like that. Is 127 cases, 1,500 bottles per an acre.
I know that some vineyards taste changes vintage to vintage, but then you have some vineyards where the wine tastes kind of cookie cutter year to year. From a winemaker's perspective, companies that do the cookie cutter, like, do they just have like a recipe they stick to? And in this way, they have more control over the fluctuations from vintage to vintage. Is that how that works?
Right. Well, definitely that's what you're tasting there is winemaking. That is a lack of better words, but just, that's just heavy-handed winemaking. And it is important that those wines taste the same from year to year. I have a lot of friends you're going to call me up and yell at me for saying that, but I mean it's the truth. And, and there's something to that. Every winery producer's got to recognize who their customer is. And, there's a customer out there that wants to make sure that they don't understand the variables of a vintage and don't care either,
Right,
and that's fine. That's fine. And so there are some bottles that, yes, that wine tastes exactly the same every year, and everything has its place and everything has its price point. I love the fact that, I can be anywhere in the world and a bottle of Budweiser tastes the same. Well, I think, we can this is a perfect segue from what we were talking about, big box brands and consistency of, those particular wines. At Left Coast, you are tasting the absolute sense of place. You're tasting the soils and you're tasting the climate and that vintage. Especially to a specific wine, the Calais Cuvée, our estate blend, I think is a beautiful snapshot of what happened at Left Coast in the year 2018, because this is Pinot Noir that's a big blend from throughout the estate. It's all your clonal and rootstock variations, row orientations, elevations, soil depths, water holding fat, all of that into one bottle. In that vintage is just a great way to experience what, Mother Nature gave us that year. We're less is more approach in the wine. I think that every time you add something to a wine, you're adding a filter or between you and how you perceive that wine, how we made it or how it was grown and how you perceive that wine. So we just try to do as little as possible always, and just let the vintage and the site shine through in every bottle.
Fair. It's funny you say that because I just did some tutorial videos on the French and the Italian wine classification systems. And as I'm sure you're well aware, like in France, for example, when you start studying wine, one of the words you're going to hear is terroir. So is it fair to say you guys are employing somewhat of a European mindset in really letting the terroir speak through your wines?
It's my hope, and it's what I try for. Absolutely.
Sounds like you're doing
absolutely. Because again, I think those are some of the most complex wines, that can be made. If you can truly just express the terroir, the soil that your vines are growing on and the climate they're growing under, if you can express that in your bottles, I think that's what I go to work and try to do every day.
So if I was training my staff about Left Coast Cellar wines, would it be accurate of me to say, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, well, Left Coast employs a European mindset where they want the terroir to be expressed through the wine. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That's what we strive for. That's what we all come to work and try to accomplish. Yes. Just to, I guess, reemphasize, it's a family owned, I'm just an employed winemaker, but a family owned estate. Left Coast is 490 acres. It's, everything we grow, we bottle, and everything we bottle, we grow. We don't source out our fruit from anywhere else. I am personally the wine grower and the winemaker. And I think you've heard, just in the last however long, my philosophies. And, it goes beyond just the vineyards and the winemaking. I think it's really important to include wild spaces interwoven through your vineyard just to create that cycle of life. Let this the outdoors and Mother Nature flowing in and out of your vineyard. It's really important to have balance and to stay away from a monoculture that it could potentially be of just a lot, just rows on end of nothing but vines. We plant a lot of pollinators. I include that in all of the cover crops that we put in between our rows, and experimenting with perennial cover crops as well, and trying to work more towards a regenerative and no-till farming practices on the estate as well. And just trying to create, not only the vines, but just the entire estate, just to treat it as well as we can. The largest landowners in this nation are the private landowners. And, we can all complain about a lot of things, but about who's doing what with their land. But, everybody just go home and take care of your land. And if we can all do it together, we can make the biggest difference, not our government agencies and not our, we're the big guys. And so, just take another look at the property you live on, whether it's a quarter-acre lot, put some bees in the backyard, start planting your own food. It's a very healthy mentally and physically way to go about your day. Not trying to change the world here. Just, we're all responsible. And let's get out there and it doesn't even have to be your property. This isn't mine, but I treat it like it's mine. And we're just trying to, treat it as one organism. And there are a lot of pieces to that pie. So just trying to get it sustained. And you can do that at home as well.
Yeah, well, I knew this before, but when I read more about you, I learned more, and that you guys not only practice sustainability, but you're live certified, you're salmon safe, and you're one of 6 producers that went to third-party verification under the aegis of the governor's office, which I thought was impressive, that you take it serious enough that you're going to have a third party come in that was, that's impartial.
Yeah, this winery roof is 14,000 square feet, and anyway, I've got 7,000 of it is solar panel. We've got another one down by the gatehouse as well. Oh yeah, it's all part of it. Like I said, it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and everything's looked at. But and quite frankly, those third party sustainability agencies, they hold you accountable, and so they make you get things in place and create these programs to it makes it it's a really a lot of it. All these things are really front loaded. It's a lot of work to get going and institute, but once you do, it's pretty smooth.
Well, again, thank you very much for everybody watching. This is Joe Wright of the winemaker at Left Coast Cellars. Left Coast Cellars is in Willamette Valley, Oregon. They make phenomenal wines. I strongly recommend you try them. Very reasonably priced as well. And again, thank you for your time. And I wish you continued success. And I'm looking forward to, when things open up, maybe I can take a trip up there or something.
Would love to have you. Yeah, I'd love to meet you. That'd be great.
Awesome.